Literally this entire week's worth of work is just out the window. Today's the day, guys. Today's the day that we're finally gonna be installing a subfloor. Now, I wanted to do this project for a while now, but I realized that there were some preliminary tasks that needed to get done before I could put in the subfloor. And then once it got time to actually install the subfloor, I realized that I better do some research and figure out exactly how I want to go about doing this. Now, there's all kinds of different videos out there on YouTube, different blog posts, different methods of creating a subfloor, and now I'm sure all of them work for the most part. Some may be better than others. And at the end of the day, I realized that the best thing that I could do is build it in a way that I could feel good about. And so there are a couple different things that I'm gonna be doing that are pretty different from the other ones that I've seen, and you'll see exactly how we're gonna do it. But I'm excited because this is the first new addition to the camper. Everything up until this point has been taking away, demolishing, taking apart what was already here, and then this is gonna be the first step of the actual building process. So I'm excited. So I mentioned that I'm gonna be doing things a little bit differently than most of the other builds that I've seen. And the main difference is for the frame that's gonna go underneath the subfloor, I'm using this. And what this is 1-inch square aluminum tubing. The thickness is about 1/8 of an inch thick, in case you're curious. And so my thought process with using aluminum tubing instead of wood, like most other subfloor frames that I've seen, is this is an inorganic material, meaning that if water does get into the subfloor, God forbid, this has a lot better of a chance of withstanding that water and not rotting away. Aside from the aluminum framing that we're gonna be using, I also have, so this is the insulation that I'll be using. I'm gonna be putting this in between the framing joists, as you'll see shortly here. This is a poly-iso foam board insulation. It's 1-inch thick. That way it's gonna be the same level and the same height as the aluminum framing. And the reason I went with the poly-iso is because this has the most insulating property for the amount of space that it takes up. So this is 1-inch, which is kind of on the smaller side, I guess. And the poly-iso foam insulation board, for a 1-inch piece, you have an R value of 6, roughly 6, maybe a little bit more. And that is pretty impressive for a 1-inch piece of foam. Oh, what's that? You're admiring my pocket knife? Thanks, I know, it's a good looking knife, huh? This is the Carter knife by the James brand, and I got it on huckberry.com. Now, one of my favorite parts about this knife is just how good it looks. I mean, look at that green thumb disc and just like the sleek scales, and it's just like a very aesthetically pleasing knife. But it also has a VG10 steel blade, which is a high quality steel that's used in many professional chef's knives. Beautiful knife. Smooth action. Honestly, one of my favorite knives I've ever had. Huckberry.com, link down below. Check it out if you want. So another cool thing about ordering this aluminum tubing from the metal shop was they actually were able to cut exactly the size that I need. I think that if you get it at Home Depot or something, I don't think, first of all, I don't think they have tubing this thick. And second of all, I don't think that they make cuts on it for you. So definitely a benefit. And it's also nice to support the local businesses. It was a really cool shop, actually. Their name was Metal Supermarket. I think it was called the Metal Supermarket, which is kind of funny. But they have all kinds of different metals. Oh yeah, looks good, right? Well, we actually have a problem. It would have been too easy if that would have worked the first time. That's just not how things work out, and you guys know this. You guys know things never work out easy the first time. You know things never work out easy the first time. So this one right here, this is a good example of how I want things to be. You see how the aluminum is more or less flush directly on the bottom of the floor? What I'm gonna do is use adhesive to adhere the aluminum down to the camper floor. So, as you'll see, all the way across on this one would work. This is what we want. Now this one, on the other hand, this is not good. You see how there's this gap that runs more or less the entire length of the aluminum? Now that is because over here, as you can see, this is not a perfectly square corner. There's actually a bit of a curvature here, and it starts the curvature much further away from the wall than I accounted for. So this, the aluminum, is basically sitting on the curvature, raising the entire aluminum. It's not sitting flush on the ground. So basically the issue is that they are just slightly too long, because when I took my measurements, I was measuring from wall to wall, and I wasn't accounting for that slight curvature at the bottom. Otherwise I would have cut off like, I don't know, about half an inch or so, maybe an inch, whatever. I would have had them cut shorter. So that just means that I have to actually trim a little bit off before we can continue. Fortunately, I called the metal place where I bought the aluminum from, and they said I could just bring it back and they'll trim some off, no problem. So I'm just gonna go that route. So I managed to get back to the metal supply shop, and they cut off about 3/4 of an inch. And as you can see, now the aluminum bars are sitting nice and flush on the camper floor. So I found that the key to cutting nice straight lines, and this might sound obvious, but just really go slow and really take your time and just be extra careful, especially on the first cut through. And try, if possible, to do it all in one without lifting the blade out and placing it again, because the issue is your straight edge, no matter how hard you try, it's always gonna have little micro shifts. And so if you're cutting and you take the knife out and then you resume, the chances that your straight edge have done a micro shift are very high. And if that is the case, then when you cut, it's not gonna be in the same straight line as where you started. So it's only taken me about 15 cuts, but I think I have it pretty down. Now, one of the preparations that I'll be making before I adhere everything down is I'm gonna go in and scuff up the surfaces with some sandpaper. That's supposed to help with the adhesion between the two surfaces. So over here we're gonna do the exact same thing to the aluminum. Gonna sand it down, get it nice and scuffed up a bit, and wipe it down. You guys hear that? That's exactly what I was afraid of. Having some kind of like noises coming in from under the subfloor. Now I'm just test fitting the subfloor right now, but as you can see, there is a little bit of like a crinkling noise coming from the insulation, which is not good because that will literally drive me crazy. If every time I'm walking, I'm hearing crinkling noises. So I think what's making the crinkling noise is this paper layer on top. I'm gonna see if maybe peeling that off will help. Bad news. I removed all of the wrapper-like material and it's still crinkling. And I discovered that it's not actually the wrapper type material that's making a crinkling noise. It's actually the insulation's lack of adhesion to the fiberglass that's causing like the noise as the adhesive that is there kind of like sticks and then separates, sticks and then separates. So I guess the bond between the insulation and the fiberglass is not that strong, and it's really just like peeling off like nothing. So I don't know if I didn't use enough adhesive. So after spending a little bit of time thinking it over, I realized that the reason the insulation wasn't sticking could be for a number of reasons. First of all, the type of insulation that I had, or that I got, had that like foil material on one side. And I think that maybe the adhesive that I was using wasn't properly adhering to that surface, especially because it's getting bonded to fiberglass. So instead I picked up this kind of insulation. It's still a very high R value of 5. It actually doesn't have any of that foil or paper on either side. It's just like straight foam. So I think there will be a bit of a better surface to adhere to. The next possibility is I just didn't use enough adhesive. For some reason, I totally underestimated how much I would need. So I was kind of having to skimp out a little bit. Today I loaded up, I got a bunch, so that way I could really just put on a ton of it as I'm sticking the panels down. And then finally, I didn't have any weight pressing down as it was adhering. So, like you saw, I got a bunch of bricks. Between those 3 things, I think, fingers crossed, I think we're gonna be able to get it done today. First of all, I'm just gonna go around and try to get some of this leftover adhesive gunk out of here. So, a quick round with the old faithful. That was literally the entire tube already. What the heck? Haven't gotten to do that for a while. Cheers. To seal up the subfloor, I'm going to be using the same exact primer that I used on the Kemper walls. It's a Kills mold and mildew primer. It's a sealer, or a sealant and a primer at the same time.
Would you be honest? Even if you know what I come from, there is no escaping this one. I'll do whatever you say if you stay with me. What else could be done? I'll even give you a call if you are freezing.
Let's get this subfloor done today. Oh, why am I wearing sunglasses when it's raining outside? I don't know. Maybe it's wishful thinking. No creaking. Everything feels really, really solid. Everything's locked in and held in very firmly, so it's good to go. Now, in order to secure the actual board, the plywood board, to the frame, I'm gonna have to drill screw holes into the actual aluminum tubing, and once I put the plywood on top, it's gonna be hard to know exactly where the center of this tubing is. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take a piece of painter's tape and go right above the frame here. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna mark exactly where the tubing is in Sharpie. All right, next I'll be taking this foil tape and just covering over the joists and sealing up any gaps that are created where things are coming together. And lastly, you guys could see this gap that runs right along the edge of where all the insulation meets the wall. That gap pretty much goes around the entire perimeter of the camper. Now, since I want this thing to be as absolutely insulated as possible, I'm gonna fill in all of those gaps with a little bit of gaps and cracks spray foam insulation. I think it's considered spray foam. I don't know, it's a gaps and cracks insulation that you spray. So I'm gonna fill those gaps. Hey, it's not the cleanest job ever, but it's gonna work. It's gonna do its job regardless. So that's what matters. That being said, everything is officially done and prepped and ready for the subfloor to get fastened on top. I'm sure you guys could hear the crinkling. I have no words. I don't understand. I checked the floor so many times for any noises before I moved forward with fastening things down, and there was no noises. I was literally walking so many times back and forth in there. No noises, nothing. I put down the subfloor, I fastened it down, and then next thing you know, I'm walking around, I just hear everywhere. You know, I really just don't understand. The only one thing that I could think of that might be causing the crinkling noises is the gaps in cracks foam insulation. Maybe the subfloor is pressing down on it ever so slightly, compressing and going up, causing it to make some kind of crinkle noise. I mean, as I speak this out loud, that seems to more than likely be the case, because that's the only thing different that I did since testing it and finding no noise. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's always the one thing that completely ruins everything. Literally, this entire week's worth of work is just out the window. This dog has been non-stop barking for the last couple hours too. Non-stop. An entire week's worth of work wasted if that noise doesn't go away, because I'm not going to be able to build on top of that. Not with that squeaking, creaking noise. I'm going to have to take it all out, start again. That being said, I think that's going to do it for this one. Thank you guys for watching. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. I don't have it in me. See ya.